You gonna lay down, Sina? Welcome, ghouls, demons, and fellow weird ones. And here we are for book 12 of the series of The Tale Behind the Weird Tales. Yeah, book 12. The Father Who Was Always There. This book I'm really excited to talk about. So let's get into it. Alrighty. So, The Father Who Was Always There by Sarah Odell. This story, oh wait, this one was another unexpected, because again, I had a list. I mentioned this in a few other videos. I had a list of stories I was gonna write. And I didn't really get through half the ones that I planned on writing. And I was gonna work through, I was gonna sit down and work out what it is that I wanted, but I knew I wanted to write a story for a person, right? For a variety of reasons. Like, oh, I love you, or I just some people I felt obligated to make a story for. And their story was really difficult for me to come up with, because it's well, I feel like I have to make you a story because it's gonna make you feel better. But I'm not really inspired to. I don't really know what to say. I want it to be positive. I don't could I could write a story about a couple people and it would have some darker tones to it. And because I was I'm not feeling that love, even though there's wisdom in the story. But I really struggled with hey, I don't want certain people to feel like I wrote them as a villain, even though it's just being honest. So I was sitting here at this space, especially as I'm on a high of all of the love and light and beautiful and healing and vibrant stories that I've been writing, for my sister-in-law, for Maisie, for Stina, for my nieces. There's these beautiful stories, I wrote for the dogs, and that was more for me, maybe kind of for Chad, but also just, I want to honor them and what they've done for me. So there's been all these other stories, and things have been, super different in my approach. And so I was okay, well, if these are I want to write stories for every dog and every cat, every pet that I've ever had. But some of their stories where I haven't been inspired on it yet. And maybe I just haven't been able to really clear out the noise and sit in the space of what that soul taught me. And maybe sometimes that lesson's not here yet. Like Doyle, I mean, I don't know why I haven't written Doyle's story yet. But it's also a little avoidant because of the emotion that comes from it. And then I also know, because Doyle died. And so I also know, once I write that story, not to say that it's over, but there is a closure. And I think that sometimes people avoid closure. I definitely do, because it's a sad ending. And so there's a lot of stories I was kind of avoiding in a lot of ways. And then this story, The Father Who Was Always There, sparked. And this sparked from the Scorpio full moon. I do know that. And then I didn't rush. I felt rushed. I wasn't rushed, but I felt rushed because Scorpio full moon happened and Father's Day is around the corner. And I had to get this to my father figure by Father's Day. And then I also realized I didn't know when Father's Day was. I'm I thought it was the end of June, but apparently it's second weekend in June, and it was late, which is fashionable of me to be late or behind or whatever, especially because I don't know, I get the idea and I want it done then and there, and I really struggle with certain timing of it. It did not affect Rob one way or another whether he received this present on Father's Day, which is a made-up holiday, or a couple weeks after Father's Day, and we had our own father figure day, because Rob's not my biological father. He's only, I say only, 13 years older than me. And I say that because it's funny. He's born the same year and the same age as Christopher. So that's just maybe weird. People probably going to pick that apart, whatever. But Rob was this character, this figure in my life since I was a child. And we've always had a really cool platonic mentor loving relationship. There were times where I'd be oh, he's like a brother. There were times where I was oh, he's like an uncle, but I always called him father figure. And I'll get into that story in a minute, as to why I call him father figure. This book sparked from a conversation that him and I had. Like him and I talked, so like we've talked since I met him. We've had this relationship, but as an adult, there were times where there was more time between our conversation. You know, there like sometimes I feel like I didn't spend as much time with him or talking to him as I wanted to for a variety of reasons, a variety of boundaries, a variety of he's this dude. Like, who is Rob? Well, Rob is the husband of Amanda. So anyone who knows like my love letter to Libras, I mentioned Amanda. She's a Libra. She was my mom's best friend. Her and my mom are no longer friends, but they went to nursing school together. And Amanda was always around. For a while, she lived just down the street from my mom. And so in the nursing school, they seemed like she was always around. And then, life changes and she wasn't around as much. They also like moved to a different house across town and whatever. There's a lot of things. My mom and her had a falling out, but Amanda was always around. And then when Amanda was around, her husband came around, and her and her husband have a really good relationship, a beautiful relationship. So he was a participant in her friendships because he is a devoted husband. And so like we got to know Rob, and it was what it was. But I remember my brothers and I were arguing and fighting, and I think I met Rob when I was like 10 or 11. And then, he'd been around a little bit. This was early on in my mom's friendship with Amanda, and then Rob coming into the picture. And but my brothers and I were fighting, and he kind of steps in like, hey, children, and he like not really like disciplines us or whatever, but like he problem solves the situation. Like my brothers and I were just being stupid kids and siblings and like bickering, and it was something really, I don't remember it being anything like significant, but I just remember it being kind of silly. And so it just kind of turned into, I called him father figure from that moment. And I kind of been fuzzy on all the details on exactly how it happened. But it just kind of blossomed into this thing where he was like father figure, and then he called me daughter figure. And we just kind of developed this relationship. My father wasn't in my life, especially at this moment in time, for a variety of reasons. My parents had a really ugly, messy divorce. Both of them are to blame for the dynamics that played out in my childhood. So I've learned. I used to blame my dad, and I used to blame my mom, and now I blame both of them because they both had parts to play in it. And that's just the healing journey of a broken home, right? Of a child's divorce. But I'm really grateful, beyond grateful, that I had Rob in my life. And so there's all these different moments where he's just been this really positive male role model and mentor and figure. And Amanda, I talked about how much Amanda has inspired me as a woman in so many ways. And I love them both. I absolutely love them both. And, Amanda, I don't have a story beautiful enough, feminine enough to create for her yet. But that's another person on my list, not out of obligation, but just out of the story hasn't struck yet. And I've really learned to not rush the stories. But it's also interesting to me because you can't plan for creativity in a sense. Because like this story blossomed out of nowhere. So I have people that I want to create something for. I want to gift them something because of what they meant to me. And it's not that I didn't want to gift Rob a story or anything like that. I did. I do. I had like all of like, it was somewhere in like lurking in my mind. But he asked me if he could FaceTime me. He's like, I need to have like a fairly serious conversation with you. And it's part of his healing journey and his shadow work. And I was like, well, yeah, like I'm kind of not really surprised, but it caught me off guard in a way that I wasn't expecting. And then I kind of start overthinking like, oh, what could this be? Is this going to be weird? Is this going to be devastating? Is the rug going to be pulled out from underneath me? Am I going to lose Rob in my life too? Because I've experienced so much loss and grief, and so I kind of go to doomsday immediately over having this conversation. Because Rob and I, we got even closer because I started calling him for marriage advice, and as I've said 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways, Amanda and Rob have been my role model for what I wanted my marriage to be. I saw their dynamic and I knew it was possible to live happily ever after and have a good marriage, which was not mirrored to me from my mother, my father, or any of the above. Like, I did not have healthy relationship examples within my family. My grandparents, like, they stayed married, but I wouldn't say they had the best relationship. I wouldn't say they had the worst relationship. My aunt, uncle seemed to have a great relationship, but I didn't really have like a good insight to have like inspiration. I really got to see and experience a lot with Amanda and Rob, and they shared a lot with me. As Rob and Amanda will say, like, they planted little seeds, and what it like honestly, what an honor it was that they chose me. They chose me with no obligation. I am just some kid that they happened to meet because Amanda decided to go to nursing school and she happened to be in the class as my mother, and they just happened to start like a study group together and become friends. And, like, to me, it was just all this like chance stuff. And I was like, who the fuck am I for you to give a fuck about me? And they gave a fuck about me just instantly, kind of for no reason. You want to talk about unconditional love? They love me unconditionally, just like, well, you're Sarah and you're this cute, sweet little girl, and I mean, there's no reason for us to not show you love. Like, you're not a dickhead. Like, I'm not perfect by any means, but I mean, they took on like my brothers too, but my brothers didn't seem to welcome it or maybe crave it as much as I did. I can't speak for them. I'm not too sure the situation or why I feel chosen by Amanda and Rob in this way. But Rob, like, you know, he wants to have this conversation with me, and this is at the Scorpio full moon of 2024, 25, excuse me. And I'm just like, okay, like, and I'm kind of getting prepared for what's going on because, like, he's been having these conversations with him about my marriage, and I've been really leaning, just going into a lot of fear mindset. And we had a beautiful conversation. I hope, I'm sure he'll be fine with me sharing this, but I also want to preface this, but this is a vulnerable thing that I'm sharing. But he expressed to me feeling indifferent towards me and him repeating a cycle of his father, and he didn't want me to feel that way. And it shocked the fuck out of me. Oh my, shocking. Because I was just like, Rob, like, oh my God, you're not, and I didn't mean this rudely, but I was like, you're not my biological father. I was like, I don't have expectation for you. I expect my mother and my father to act a certain way because they fucking created me for some fucking reason. They decided to have sex unprotected and I decided to be born or whatever. They didn't abort me, whatever. But I'm here and I expect them to take care of me. You and Amanda had no obligation to take care of me or give a fuck about me in any way, shape, or form, but you always have. And anything that you've given me, I've always just been grateful for. So, like, this weight that he was feeling, it was foreign to me. Cause like my own blood doesn't feel that weight. They don't, or at least they haven't expressed it to me. I don't want to speak for anybody, but my experience, it didn't seem like my family cared about me in that way to reflect and be like, hey, I might have been indifferent towards you. I might have not been as supportive as I should have been. Like, so for him to have accountability and then also want to have the conversation with me to like just the emotional intelligence and awareness. I was like, holy fuck, like, I'm not the only person who thinks this way. Because I always felt weird for my need to reflect and have conversations. And then I went to school and became a therapist. And I was like, well, this is why. Like, this is just a skill and it's a service. But it's actually just like a natural part of like relationships and dynamics with people, community, like that whole thing. So this is just like, it's just epiphanies, healing. Whole cycle closure things, Scorpio fucking full moon, ancestral work here. Like, Rob and Amanda are obviously soul family to me in some way. And again, I couldn't be more grateful for them. So he's having this conversation and I'm just like overwhelmed with love and emotion that he even cared to any degree to share this with me and to acknowledge this with me. And then I got to, I told him, I was like, you've chosen me from the day you met me. And I kind of don't know why, but I'm grateful for everything you guys have done. And I don't want you to feel guilty because like, in my mind, you don't have any reason to because you have no obligation to me. But in his mind, he did. Like he feels like there's a purpose to his role, and he also like they don't have kids of themselves, and they've chosen different paths for different reasons. But he's also wanted to fulfill a fatherly mentor role. And it just kind of shows that you can be a mother or father and not have kids and like and still feel fulfilled. You know, people tell you all the time you're not gonna be fulfilled if you don't have kids and you're gonna be alone. And I think people often forget that you can choose a soul family and that you can be in these roles without going through the physiological biological process of it. 'Cause he was more a father to me than my father had been in my life. And, you know, at this moment in time, my dad's really working hard to mend our relationship and all of the above. But Rob was there since I was 10, 11 years old. You know, my dad, we started talking again when I was 20, and like it's a whole different journey. It's a completely different experience. It's a completely different intention and just dynamic. Like Rob and Amanda see me for who I am. They don't want to change me. They're proud of me for being me, even if they don't fully um agree. You know, like they allow me to be different and love me regardless. That they represent unconditional love. They have never neglected me or ignored me or dismissed me in a way that felt malicious. There have been times, you know, as a needy child, to be like, well, why aren't they here? And I'm like, well, they have their own lives. And they are like, you know, those are lessons that everyone learns. That people are entitled to their own lives, but they're also entitled to their own choices. And I kind of also realized that I was expecting them to just know that I needed support. Well, they knew I needed support as a child because they witnessed a lot of stuff going on in my household. And so because they witnessed it, they stepped up for me. And then like they don't know what's going on. Like they think everything's fine because they only see what I post on Facebook, and I'm not like reaching out to them. And I'm like, why aren't you supporting me? And well, I'm not reaching out. I'm not letting them know. I'm not growing up. I'm not being an adult in this like new shift. And I'm like, so there was a lot that came from this conversation with Rob and I, where it's like, so I can rely on you. And he's like, absolutely. I want you to. In fact, like he craves fulfilling that role, and I need that role filled because that, you know, I'm not getting it anywhere else. Like that foundation, that's been a crack in my foundation for a very long time. And he's, you know, been trying to mend it the best way he can, but I also had to let him. I had to allow him to fully be there. And this conversation really allowed that to happen. And just the dismantling of the illusion of things and realizing the truth of that I've always been divinely protected, divinely supported. People have always been there. But you have this understanding, and it's no blame to myself or anyone who's in this situation, but like you're kind of like my parents, my blood parents are supposed to be doing this. So you kind of detach and dissociate from anyone else trying to lend an olive branch or a hand to you. Cause it's like, that's good and all, but like I want them to do it. Like I was really trying to force my mom to show up for me. I was really trying to force my dad to show up for me. I was trying to force all of these people who didn't want to show up for me to show up for me. And that's because I don't know, that's just kind of what I knew. And I realized like, no, I can tell them to go kick rocks, and I can let people who want to show up for me. Like it doesn't have to be this condition of like, hey, you're my mother, you birthed me. So I had this expectation. No expectations with Rob. Him and Amanda did not create me, but they chose me. And I don't know, it was wonderful. And so after we hang up our FaceTime, like our 3-4 hour fucking FaceTime, because Rob lets me, yeah, and he listens with joy. He doesn't, his ears aren't bleeding when I fucking talk. He appreciates every moment, every insight, and we have this amazing rapport in a way that I've always wanted from family. And after I hang up with him, the line in my head is never indifferent, always fair. Rob was the father that was always there. And so this kind of goes through a story of just this, I guess, subtle, intuitive, spiritual ghost that like haunts you in a positive way. I like the spooky terms for it, but this essence that's always been there. And you can get biblical about it if you want to. You know, like it reminded me of the Footprints poem. My grandmother really loved the Footprints poem, where it's like, well, you only see one set of footprints in the sand. It was because I carried you. And we can deconstruct that in my anti-Christian like rhetoric another time. But in that moment, I understood the metaphor, the essence, the energy of what it meant to have a father hold you when you're suffering. Rob had always been there. He'd always been there to give me the motivation, the tools, the essence to continue on. He helped me climb my mountain by myself, which is a fatherly masculine role. The father, the emperor, like if you start diving into spirituality and psychological symbolism of the father and the role of the father, they're supposed to encourage you to do the dangerous thing, or encouraging independence, and they're encouraging all of these characteristics and attributes, archetypes, all of this stuff. And Rob was doing that, and I wasn't aware at how, because it's so subtle, like how much was, because I was also super distracted by all the trauma, all the turmoil, all the pain, all the melancholy, all everything. So much sorrow, so much depression that I was drowning in. And just for him to, like, every time my head was underwater, he helped me back up. I would fall down, he'd pick me back up, and I didn't realize he was doing it. My whole life, that since the moment I met him and Amanda have both been doing it. And I've had other people, there's Brant and Amanda. Amanda's are apparently really significant to me. But Brant and Amanda Thrower, they were another couple that, like, saw what I was doing, they saw that I was struggling, and they picked me up. Like, I've had supportive people, and I was really blind to it. And I wasn't as, I feel like, appreciative as I should have been, but I also don't know how I could have been, with all of the blinders and the box I was forced in. When you only are given like a peephole to look through, it's really hard to see the big picture of everything. And so as I'm breaking wall on wall on wall, and paradigm and construct and all this stuff within, the third eye, right? The awakening of the third eye, you see the eagle eye picture of everything. Another Scorpio reference, by the way. So you go through the ascension process and you finally get to see everything from a bird's eye view. You realize that it's been there all along. And so there's some real cool symbolism in the artwork and the animal spirits. I asked Rob what animal spirits he would describe himself as. So I realized that there was a lot that I didn't know. I was trying to get these answers, these deep answers from my mother and my father, and my brothers, and this person, that person. They couldn't give it to me. I had to meet them where they were at, and I was feeling unfulfilled. But then, like Rob, I asked him the question, and I get the deep philosophical answer that I wanted. It was alignment. And this is no shame to my family. They are who they are. I am who I am. I didn't belong. I still don't feel like I belong. And it doesn't mean that I don't. I think they love me in their own way. I think they love me as far as they can reach me. And you have to meet people where they're at. So I meet them where they're at, and they meet me where they can meet me. In their own way, they probably feel like they're meeting me where I'm at. And so I try to give them a lot of grace. But just these epiphanies and realizations of my chosen family has been significant. And so I wrote A Father Who is Always There for Robert Bradshaw, my father figure, who has helped me be everything that I am. So I don't want to ruin too many of like the animal spirits in the story, and don't want to share too much more about it. But that is like what inspired the story. And then I rushed, not really rushed, but like I urgently, instantly, like was sparked to write the story. So I wrote the story, got the animal spirits that like correlated to make it the fable, and I got the tale going, and then I made sure that I got them t-shirts. I was like, yeah, because they'll actually support me. They'll rock my weird merch. And so I ordered them t-shirts, and I made each of them a candle. And then Rob had his book. and the bookmark that came with it. And I wrote my little message. Yeah, I don't mention this, but I sign something, a message in every book. And then I have like the dedication page, but I handwrite things in every copy. Sometimes I don't think I've just signed it for people who bought separate copies. I usually will at least put like my motto, like live deliciously, love authentically, or something, or stay weird. Like I put like a little message in there, but I handwrote a really beautiful message, and then he has his dedication. So, The Father Who Is Always There by Sarah Odell. I would like to dedicate this tale to my beloved father figure, Ra. I wish to express all the gratitude in the world for all you have done for me, for every moment you chose to love me without obligation, and every seed of wisdom you have planted. Your presence has always felt, and your presence was always felt, and your advice always stuck. I wouldn't have blossomed into the woman I am today without your unconditional love, not bound by blood, but connected by soul. With all the love in return, your daughter figure, Sarah. I added some other symbolism in the dedication page that has more to do with my personal water energy, connections with Freya, and some other things along those lines in there, which I find an interesting pull um, in, I guess, seasonal elements of things. So yeah, no, this is beautiful, beautiful piece. And then the artwork is still, it's so artistic with the graphics I chose, but it's more grayscale. And that was kind of a shift. One, it fits my aesthetic perfectly. Raw can mention that I got the colors down as well, which I thought was like awesome that like there was that like level of insight behind it. But then like the pop of color that correlates like a mixture of our astrological elements with like the pop of color that comes through, and as you flip through the story you'll see that, and it builds into the anticipation of the plot of the story and why it goes from the grayscale to this like pop of color that I find majestic in every way. So yeah, I don't think that there's anything left to say about that. That is the tale behind the tale of the father who is always there. Uh, a huge healing of the paternal element in my ancestry, which maybe, sorry, I'm just realizing I wrote down for like the moon juice episode of like healing the patriarchy, and I couldn't figure out because I didn't write. I should have written more details down to like really understand what the fuck I was trying to say. I think it has to do with this. So check, did it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. There's so much I could get into when it comes to the patriarchy. And Rob, like, he has a beautifully healed perspective. Like, he's gone through a whole journey of being, a masculine born in this system, and what he's had to overcome, and like all the change he's had to endure in his lifetime to be the man that he is. And so he's someone who's committed to doing the inner work. Him and his wife both are committed to doing the inner work. And I wasn't aware. I mean, obviously, you could say it's obvious by who they are as people, but that's part of why it wasn't weird to them when I started like being more open about everything that I'm doing. Like they're just as committed to the inner work, and they're deeply spiritual people as well. We might express it differently, but there's still that core anchor of understanding that everyone's inner work is going to look differently. And as long as you're not hurting anybody, you're free to do what you will. Like, as long as you're not intentionally, maliciously hurting others. You might hurt people unintentionally. It's how you overcome it. And Rob and I have had such beautiful conversation, and I hope for him to be on my podcast. We've talked about it. You got to plan it out and iron it out, but hearing Rob and I, yeah, back and forth, I think it would be the most perfect example of everything that I'm talking about this book, and who he is as a person and on a soul level. And you'll see how him and his wife inspired me to grow the way that I've grown. In Rebellion, outside of my bloodline. So cheers to Rob, cheers to Amanda, cheers to my Bradshaws. And thank you, Rob, for being the father that was always there. The father I never knew I desperately needed in every way, shape, or form. Thank you for loving me just as I am. Thank you for never expecting me to be anything other than Sarah. So, with that, thank you and stay tuned for the next book in our series.